So hello, welcome everyone. We are going to give it a minute or so for folks to find their way through the link into the room. But we're glad to have all of you with us this evening. And for those of you that have logged in already, welcome again. Just a quick note that we will be using the Q&A function for any questions that you have. You can certainly use that now just to say hello, maybe tell us where you're from. And the chat for this webinar has been disabled. So the Q&A is the communication tool of choice for the evening. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome again. It's a real pleasure for me to be here tonight with Eastman's Associate Professor of Music Leadership, Rachel Roberts. And I'll tell you just a little bit about her, although I'm sure with many of you who've been researching the program, she needs no introduction, but we always like to brag about our faculty and our alumni, so I will do that now. As an Eastman alum, Rachel received her Bachelor of Music in Flute Performance while also earning the Arts Leadership Certificate through Eastman's Institute for Music Leadership, which was opened in the late 90s. Since then, she's had a remarkable career in arts leadership with positions at the Atlantic Symphony Orchestra and the New England Conservatory, where she spearheaded the creation of the Entrepreneurial Musicianship Department. So we consider ourselves very fortunate to have her join us in 2018 to be the lead faculty member and the graduate degree programs director for the Institute of Music Leadership at Eastman. And I'd just like to add that her very presence at Eastman in this position is evidence of how arts leadership at Eastman has evolved and developed since the IML was created over 20 years ago, to the point that we now offer this Master of Arts degree in music leadership. So Rachel, welcome.
Thank you so much.
And I'm going to turn it over to Rachel in just a moment, but wanted to give everybody just a quick overview of the graduate studies program at Eastman in general. Just some quick facts about the school. For those of you who don't know, we're located in Rochester, New York, which is a small but thriving city in Western New York State, just northwest of what we call the Finger Lakes region, where all the wineries are. And it's one of the professional schools of the University of Rochester. So at Eastman, there are about 520 undergraduate students and another 300 or so graduate students enrolled in mostly performance degrees in both jazz and classical, but also in programs such as composition, music teaching and learning, which oversees our music education degrees, music theory, musicology, and film scoring. And now, of course, we've added to that mix the Master of Arts in Music Leadership. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Rachel.
Great. So for today's session, we wanted to just give an overview as to what the MA in Music Leadership is, talk a little bit about our classes, the faculty, the application process. And then some of you may or may not know that our degree just received certification from New York State Department of Education to transition to be a fully online degree. So I wanted to share with you some of those updates as well. And then the third part of the session to share with you a couple other things as to how you could pursue the MA in Music Leadership along with other opportunities, both at Eastman and at the University of Rochester. I expect that this will take probably 20-ish minutes, 25 minutes, and then the rest of the time is open for your questions. So as Matthew said, feel free to utilize the Q&A found at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And we both have this open. We will watch it along the way. If there's something that comes through as I'm speaking, Matthew will interrupt me and ask me to cover it, or we can use that for the Q&A afterwards. But this is hopefully a session that will help answer your questions and what you are interested in learning in the MA in Music Leadership. And I'm so glad that you have joined us tonight. Yeah. So the Master of Arts in Music Leadership, if you pursue this as a full-time degree, you can do so in as little as 14 months. That means beginning at any point in the year, actually. We had initially imagined this as a summer full academic year and a second summer. But as of this year, we actually have a fall admission cycle with matriculation beginning in the summer. So regardless of when that start point is, a full-time degree option would be a 14-month cycle. You can, of course, choose to pursue this as a part-time degree program. Doing so part-time will allow you to continue working full-time should you want. I have how many students? 1, 2, 3, 4 students in the program right now who are doing this as a part-time degree study while they maintain their full-time jobs in other areas. And this provides the opportunity for them to apply everything that they are learning into their professional work experiences at the moment. So it's really a nice synergy of learning and experience in that way. The coursework is an intensive course load. There's 10 required courses. I'll walk through those on the next screen. Embedded in the curriculum is 5 credits of electives, with all of the both required and elective courses. We look for experiential learning. So how do we not just have this a whole theoretical based curriculum, but instead find the opportunities for you to apply this as you would find yourself doing in professional situations. We have created all of our required curriculum, especially to be everything that you would need to know to walk into an organization and feel comfortable and confident with the language and skills and knowledge that would be required of you. And then the last piece of the coursework, which I'm happy to talk about more later if anyone has questions, is the Capstone Experience. And that's the summation of after you have completed every other component of the program. It's the experience that is individually created for you. I work with a student to identify and create that experience to provide the summation of application. How do you put all of the knowledge that you have learned the prior 12 months into action under the guidance both of Eastman and a professional organization that you are working with? So here are all of our faculty members, and Matthew, you can go ahead and advance all of them if you want. I teach 5 of the 10 required courses. So this is the biggest piece of what I do. I teach 2 courses in the fall and spring and 1 in the summer. Jim Dozer, who's right under my photo, teaches Leadership Issues in Music, which is a fantastic course. Giving students insight and connections to different leaders in the industry. As students interview these leaders to see what's on their minds, what they navigate every day. Law in Music is taught by Ari Solotov, who has worked before as an orchestra executive before transitioning into a legal career, and is one of just a very small handful, under half a dozen individuals in the country that focus on music and law in particular. So he teaches our Law and Music course, which is taught in the summertime. Over on the top right is Judy Ricker. She teaches our Marketing for Musical Enterprises course. Judy is an Eastman alum. I should also say that Jim is an Eastman alum. I'm an Eastman alum. So almost all Eastman alums here teaching. But Judy is an Eastman alum. She's an oboist. She also is a marketing professional. So she went back to school and earned her MBA from U of R Simon Business School. And has had a long career in Rochester with one foot in music, performing and teaching on her oboe, and one foot in marketing. Below her, teaching Introduction to Financial Management, is Lisa Dixon French. Lisa also is an Eastman graduate and has gone on to have a career in orchestra management, being executives at the Memphis Symphony and the Portland, Maine Symphony, and currently she's CEO of the Nashville Ballet. Lisa also just recently completed her executive MBA at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, and has said herself many times she loves numbers, she loves the budgeting process, and it's a joy to have her teaching this course. And last but certainly not least is Melissa Nahn, also an Eastman alum. She's the founder and executive director of Fifth House Ensemble based in Chicago. She will be teaching beginning this spring our generating and screening entrepreneurial ideas in music. And then the other courses, just quickly, that I teach, from the bottom up, development and fundraising, kind of self-explanatory, how to raise funds in music. Economics and musical arts organizations takes a look at how arts organizations fit into both local and national economies, and how to think about that economic generator as you are pursuing any type of career in the arts. Music administration and governance is one of the foundation courses. It typically is taught in the summer, and this is a deep dive into all different types of leadership and organization and management styles, specifically looking at strategic planning and how organizations are set up and designed. The second one on that list, designing creative initiatives for musical enterprises. This is a practicum course. So every year we find a partner. This year's partner is Buffalo Stringworks, an El Sistema inspired program in Buffalo. And the students work together as a consulting team to take on a project with the organization. The last one is one of my most favorite classes to teach, creative and innovative leadership in musical enterprises. And this utilizes the Eastman case studies every single week, diving into different issues, different challenges that you may encounter in organizations. We also spend a lot of time looking at leadership, and new this year incorporated in these classes is expanding on those leadership styles and competencies, specifically as it relates to anti-racism and equity in the arts and in society. The application process is that we require everyone to have an undergraduate degree in music, or a not necessarily music performance, but some type of music related field. And we expect everyone to have a high standard of musical performance abilities. We for the application are looking at your resume, we're looking at the transcripts. We do require a GRE. This is parallel with all the MA programs here at Eastman. They do require the GRE. We also are looking at a personal statement. So having your words and your articulation of how you see the MA in music leadership fitting into your career and where you're at and where you want to go. Since this is a Master of Arts degree, it is an intensive academic degree. So I ask that you submit either a past research paper or sample of your academic writing. That piece does not need to be something that you go out and create just for this application. It can be a past paper that you have submitted that you feel best represents your work. And then the last piece are 3 recommendation letters. There's more details about this on the website that is linked here. And if you have other specific questions, feel free to type them in the chat and we'd be happy to answer them as well. So for the audition day, so to speak, there's a couple parts to this interview process. One is an individual interview with me, where we really focus on getting to know you as a candidate. What are your own thoughts about leadership, your vision for your future, and how this music leadership degree can help get you to that path? The second piece is a performance audition. This is a 10-minute performance. Anything that you want to perform, it's your choice, followed by a 10-minute presentation of the work that you performed. We are looking to hear you talk about music, what your interests are, what your presentation skills are like, and what your advocacy is like for talking about music and being a persuasive speaker. Additional meetings, often you'll meet with the IML director, Jim Dozer, just to say hello and learn a bit more about what the IML department is at Eastman. And often we've had group coffee meetings with music leadership students. Our audition days are all the Fridays in February, though this year, instead of being on campus, everything will be virtual. That includes submitting your performance audition, the performance and the presentation online. And if you have questions about this, don't hesitate to reach out at all. But the individual interview will be a synchronous experience. And I am working with a couple current music leadership students to be available to have synchronous chats with you so that you can talk with students to hear their own personal experiences about what it's like to be in the program. So even though I won't get to meet you in person at Eastman this year, just due to university restrictions, I am still trying to create that same environment so that you will know what we are about and what this degree program could offer you. As I mentioned in the beginning, the Master of Arts in Music Leadership has just received its certification from New York State Department of Education to transition to a fully online degree. These conversations began pre-COVID. It actually began last year when a number of prospective students were interested in not leaving their jobs, but having access to this information and this degree. So that set off a whole series of conversations and proposals. And I'm so happy that this has happened at this point in time. The online degree will officially begin as of summer of 2021, when the summer semester begins. The online degree experience has the same amount of rigor and standards that we expect from students, whether in person or online. I myself have taken a number of classes to look at how to create curriculum online to be engaging and meaningful just as much, if not more so actually, than the in-person experience. And in the online courses, it's a mix of both asynchronous and synchronous meetings. This also has a benefit to those that choose to participate while working and maintaining a job, because there is no one set time that you have to work around. All of the synchronous meetings are scheduled based on the student's availability. And there's no location barriers as well. You can access this information and this content anywhere you are in the world. The one difference is the electives. So for those that are choosing this as a fully online remote study, there will be a limited selection of electives that will be available for you. Secondary lessons are, of course, always available online as well, which we are pleased to be able to offer that. For those that are in the Rochester area and want to take their electives here in person, that is, once the university says it's okay to open up and do that, they will have access to the full scope of offerings here that Eastman has to fulfill their electives. So that's just the primary difference. Even if you are in Rochester, all of the music leadership required courses will be taught online. And the other piece that we were happy to learn about through this process and transition to online education is that the Master of Arts in Music Leadership degree can be used to obtain professional certification for teaching in New York State. So we are happy that the MA in Music Leadership is one of these graduate degrees that can help teachers across, music teachers especially, across New York State obtain their permanent professional certification. The MA in Music Leadership also has a pathway to earn a combined MBA, both an MA and an MBA. The coursework takes about twice as long, 26 months, and you go through most of the MA in Music Leadership. You stop at the Capstone and then go over to Simon School of Business here at the University of Rochester campus and take their MBA core. And then once that degree is completed, come back and combine the learning from those 2 years into your Capstone experience. At the end of those 26 months, you would then walk away with 2 degrees, both the MA in Music Leadership and the MBA. It's worth noting that the application process, if you are interested in this, the MBA application is separate than the MA in Music Leadership. There's separate deadlines and separate applications. So if this is something you are interested in, please note that they do expect either a GMAT or GRE. There's essays, transcripts, and 2 references. So it's possible that there could be some overlap between what you submit to us and what you submit to Simon, but there are 2 separate submissions if you are looking at this option. The link on the screen will help you identify more of what's included in that application and review process. And I'd be happy to talk with you or connect you with someone at Simon if this is an area that interests you. For those that are here or going to pursue graduate study at Eastman, there's a pathway to earn a minor in music leadership. This pathway is for DMA students or PhD students. Earning a minor typically takes 2 to 3 semesters. The minor in music leadership is very individualized. So a student will enroll anywhere from 10 to 12 credits of music leadership coursework. They will have individual advising appointments with me. And then they'll have a final review once the credits and advising are done. That final review is with me and a couple colleagues as well, just to talk about what they gained from the music leadership course of study and how that complements and helps enhance their current DMA or PhD studies. The application for that is that it's due by November 1 in your 2nd year here at Eastman. And it's just 2 brief essay submissions as well as an interview with me. But if you are pursuing DMA or PhD studies here at Eastman and are interested in this, please don't hesitate to drop me a note. I'd be happy to share more information about this. Right. So at this point, those are all the big pieces that I had. I know we covered that pretty quickly. I see 2 questions in the Q&A right now. One, does the IML and related coursework focus only on Western classical music, or does it involve contemporary commercial music, music theater, and jazz? I'd say at the moment, it's mostly focused on classical. But there are other elements being brought in, whether it's jazz, there's some music theater looking at Broadway, contracts, for instance. So it's primarily focused in one, but we are trying to cover the different areas of research. I'd also say that in the coursework, I had talked about it being very experiential. A lot of the assignments are projects that we ask students to bring. They may be their own real life examples or projects that they could imagine themselves taking on with different organizations. And oftentimes I'll have students bring in their own organization, whether it's a jazz group or something that's very personal to them, and explore the learning through that lens. So the cohort of learners also enhances and continues to broaden the scope of what we cover in class by their own initiative and bringing in these different examples.
Yeah, I was just noticing there's another question related to coursework on secondary lessons, which I think you mentioned as something that you can take, right? But maybe you could speak a little bit to what we mean when we say secondary lessons at Eastman.
Sure. Primary lessons at Eastman are those students who are looking to earn a degree on their instrument. So for me, I was a flute performance major as an undergraduate, and I was here as a primary flute student. Those entering the MA in music leadership are not primary or are not technically viewed as being primary study on their instrument. Their primary focus of study is in music leadership. But in completing those 5 credits of electives for the degree, the student has the choice as to whether they want to study and enhance their music theory knowledge in some way. Perhaps you're interested in artistic planning and want to take some more music history courses to enhance your repertoire knowledge. And some students are interested in continuing to study on their instrument. So that's what I mean by secondary lessons. For those that want to continue that study on their instrument, you have the opportunity to enroll and do that. There will be a separate audition during the fall semester when you matriculate and enroll. Placement into a primary faculty studio is not guaranteed because those go first and foremost to those who are here studying as a primary performance major. Oftentimes the lessons are with our DMA or PhD graduate students, though there are occasions where students have connected with and studied with primary faculty on their own. But that's what I mean with secondary lessons, is that those that enroll in the music leadership program, their primary focus is music leadership. So taking a lesson would be the secondary completion of those credits.
Right, and would be an elective actually, right? Not.
Yes, it would be elective. It's not required.
Of the degree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great. Trying to sort of keep these organized somehow, but maybe we should just go in order because they're coming in, which is great. Lots of great questions here. Paul has a question about, because you touched on this briefly, but if you could say more about how issues of racism in music are addressed through the coursework in IML.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Paul. I think this is an ongoing evolution in our degree. We definitely address this in our leadership issues in music course, in the leadership course in the spring. The work that we're doing in the practicum course this year addresses issues of socioeconomic status and access to arts and education. I'm personally myself enrolled in 2 classes right now to try to enhance the discussion for what's happening in the arts right now. How do these issues in society impact us as leaders and as future leaders? I don't think there's any one specific way to answer that question at the moment of what is it that we all should be doing, other than continuing to educate ourselves, continuing to have these conversations, and knowing the resources as to where to go now and into the future to continue our own learning and advocacy for making the change that's needed. I will say that all the music leadership faculty meet at least once a semester. And when we met in the summertime, and then when we met again just a couple weeks ago, this was a topic of conversation. And every faculty member is finding their own way to bring up these topics in their classes and conversations with the students as it relates to their specific discipline. So having examples, for instance, in music and law, having examples in finance and budgeting, having examples as it relates to fundraising and the differences of race and class and where that is segmented. So this is a piece that is beginning to be integrated throughout the coursework as a whole, and it's something that all of us are personally committed to making present in our own curriculum. It might also be worth noting that our dean, Jamal Rossi, had put together an Eastman Action Commission for Racial Justice this summer. I was one of 20 members that served on this commission to make a recommendation to Dean Rossi of how Eastman can work towards becoming an anti-racist organization. That document should be released here in the next week. It will be public on Eastman's website. And from Dean Rossi's standpoint, it is one of his top priorities to have Eastman engage with this topic throughout all levels of classes and learning and experience at Eastman. Matthew, I don't know if you have anything else to say about that commission in particular.
No, I was just about to add that when you added it. So okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Next, we have a question from Joshua. A question about the music leadership minor. And if that's available to master's students as well, or just exclusively doctoral students.
That is at the moment exclusively toward doctoral students. I will say though that all of the courses in the MA in Music Leadership are available to any graduate student, every master's student at Eastman. So if you decide to pursue a master's in trumpet performance, say, instead of music leadership, you could take some of the music leadership courses as part of your electives for that trumpet performance degree. Or another option that you could have is to double major. I've have 2 students, possibly a third, who are doing that same thing. So they are earning both a performance master's and the MA in music leadership. This extends your time into 3 years. So the traditional performance degree would be a 2-year master's, and then you'd add on 1 year in the MA in music leadership. However, the electives that you would take for the MA in music leadership could be some of the required courses that you take in your performance degree, and the same works the other way. So the electives that you would take for your performance degree could be the required courses that you take in the MA in music leadership.
Yeah, that was a really good answer. In fact, it highlights that lots of things are possible. So when we use the term minor, this is just nomenclature, right? That just happens to be how we define how a doctoral student fits in another area of study, if they want to, into their PhD or DMA program. But it's just like at the undergraduate level, right? Where you have an interest in an area outside of your major. How you pursue that and what it's called just sort of depends on the academic structure in place, whether it's a minor or a concentration or an emphasis, or you're just taking extra coursework as electives. And the same is possible here at the master's level, including, as she mentioned, the combination of 2 degrees.
Yeah. Matthew, I have one more thing to add to that as well. Separate from the MA in Music Leadership, the Institute for Music Leadership has a number of elective courses through our Arts Leadership program. And all of those courses are available to you as a student, as a graduate student. They're available to you for free. And with our transition to being an online degree, there are no more time constraints or conflicts between having a required MA in Music Leadership course and some of these other ALP courses and curriculum. So that's just also something to keep in the back of your mind if you are looking for these types of courses. Not only do we have the Master of Arts in Music Leadership, but the whole complement of the Arts Leadership Program courses will be available to you as a graduate student.
Right. And I think with that, we've sort of answered Daniel's question about a master's student doing a certificate, and we would call it arts leadership, the certificate, and certainly being allowed to take courses in arts leadership.
Yeah, so the Arts Leadership Certificate is different than the MA in Music Leadership. The MA in Music Leadership is a degree. The Arts Leadership Certificate is just what it sounds like. It's a certificate. It shows that you have gone through a number of the ALP courses as well as an internship or two. I think there's two internships. And to go through that pathway of earning the Arts Leadership Certificate, the application process, it's a competitive application process that happens in the fall semester when you arrive as a graduate student. Just given the nature of the length of work, you will need to apply in that first fall semester, go through the interview process, and if accepted, then register for a number of courses, ALP courses, advising, and internships.
Great. And then we have a question about what professional organizations will recognize this degree, the Master of Arts in Music Leadership. I think you covered that a little bit in talking about the New York State certification process. I think this gets also a little bit at the idea that, you know, for a lot of job applications that a student might apply for, it's not so much the name of the degree, but the skills that you gain when you through doing the coursework in the degree. Would you agree?
Yes, I would agree. And I'd say in terms of professional organizations, perhaps the better way to talk about this is what our alums are doing right now. You know, right now we are currently in the third year of students. So we only have 2 past years of students who have completed the MA in Music Leadership. But I'm so happy to report that many of them, most all of them, have jobs, even graduating in a pandemic and getting a job in the arts industry. One is helping to run the youth orchestras at Symphoria in Syracuse, New York. Another one is working with the China National Symphony in her hometown of Beijing. Another colleague, former student, just left his job at San Francisco SF Jazz, San Francisco Jazz, to work as a contracted employee for a major music company working on a project that is soon to be released here in the next couple months, working in the technology rights and research part of that. So our alums are really creating a pathway of where their interests lie, whether it's in technology, whether it's on the stage, off the stage. I have another alum who's working in North Carolina with her focus has been at the intersection of social justice and the arts, and she has found placement there working, just began her job, I believe 6 weeks ago as well. So in terms of the organizations that recognize this, I think anywhere does, you know, they know Eastman, many people know Eastman for the Arts Leadership Program and the Institute for Music Leadership, and this is a natural next step and outgrowth. And our alums are getting those calls for interviews and for job placements.
Great.
Oh, and I will say, I just had an alum get a job yesterday in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I gave her a reference for it and I was so excited. So, even during a pandemic, there are jobs still out there. There's need for music and musicians. And I'm so happy that the MA in music leadership alums are being successful.
I hadn't even heard about that one. That's great to hear.
It's brand new, hot off the press.
So we've talked about how the MA in music leadership can be now completed completely online. Is the MBA also an online degree? Does it have an online degree option?
As of today, that answer is no. However, there's conversations happening, and I would be happy to keep you updated with where that conversation leads.
Great. This is a question about the application from Brianna. For the academic writing part, does it have to be writing based in the music field, or can it be on any subject?
It can be on any subject. I have had really fascinating research papers turned in that had nothing to do with music. I love reading them, and it gives me a different perspective as to who you are as a candidate and as a person. So if you have a paper that is not music based, but you feel represents you well in some way, I would be more than happy to read that and review it.
Great. So it's really more about how you build an argument, do independent research, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Great. Paul is asking if it's feasible to complete the entire MA while also completing a DMA. I think we may have touched on this a little bit, but in my understanding, it would add maybe a semester or two.
Yeah, I don't think I've had anyone do that, but if you're interested in that, Paul, I think that absolutely could be an option, and I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you and with some of my colleagues to figure out how that might work. But I do think maybe it would add a semester or two, but that absolutely could be possible.
Great. And then Daniel is asking, what kind of focus on the arts and social justice is there in the Institute's curriculum? You've actually touched on this a bit already.
Yeah, I think one thing that I haven't touched on a lot, which I can expand upon for this answer, is what the Capstone Experience is like. The capstone, as I mentioned in the very beginning, is the last project that you take on as a student in this degree. That is individually designed between a student and their individual interests and me in figuring out, okay, what is it that you're interested in? What are the organizations that are out there? And how can I myself help to personally create an experience for you that is meaningful and is a summation of your work and your study? In the last 2 years, I've had 8 students go through this capstone, and every single one of them, well, maybe the better way to phrase this is that of those 8, I've only known one of the 8 partners. The other 7, I have done research on myself, emailed, made cold calls, and every single one of them is so excited to help build a partnership and create this experience for our students. It's not a typical internship. It's instead this intensive 5-week, 40-hour-a-week experience where you take on a project with an organization and are overseen by Eastman, but also overseen and part of the team of the organization. Speaking to the question of social justice in particular, one student who was in the first year of the program was and still is, this is the path that she's going down, very interested of the intersection of arts and social justice. In many, if not all of her assignments throughout the course of the year, she would always bring in organizations and projects that focused on this, and that added to the class discussion. For her capstone, I was able to connect with the organization called Street Symphony, serving the homeless population in Skid Row in LA. And so she took on a capstone experience with Street Symphony and Vijay Gupta for 5 weeks, working with them, helping to lead their summer block party for the residents on Skid Row. I share that just to say it's very individually driven. These are topics that are pieces of conversation throughout the entire experience, but it's also shaped on the students' needs. So the more students bring these types of conversations into their work, the more present it will be throughout the curriculum. And that capstone experience absolutely can be designed in a way to support your own individual interests. That's part of the reason that we keep the cohorts small, so we can have that very individualized attention throughout the entire degree program.
Great. There are a couple of questions that are related around cost and scholarship and all of that good stuff. This sounds great. How much does it cost? Tuition is set at the graduate level per credit, and it's right in line with all of our other graduate programs, which translates roughly to, for the fall spring terms, around $44,000 and about $10,000 for each of the summer terms. But that's just the base tuition, not including scholarship support. And we should hasten to add that all admitted students will receive some type of scholarship. At the graduate level, the scholarship process is purely merit-based, meaning it's based on the review of the application file, the interview, and just the sort of process of gauging the background and experience and readiness of the student for the program. So the scholarship support really ranges widely. It's like our other degree programs, the only way to really ultimately know what it will cost is to be admitted and to receive that offer. So that gives you an idea of how that works. I hope. I don't know if Rachel, you have anything to add to that.
No, I'm just looking at the next question about the tuition difference in online versus the in-person degree. There is no tuition difference. The standard of education and the rigor of this degree does not change just because of its delivery. For better or for worse, COVID has forced us into this. So we have been operating in an online degree, both in the summer and the fall and this coming spring. And the rigor of this degree is just as intense, if not more so, as when we were in person. We've also done quite a bit I have done quite a bit to still build that community of learners. We have, separate from the classes, opportunities to network with one another, doing that a couple times a semester, because those that you go through this program with and those that have come before you, these will be your colleagues and peers in this degree and in the field once you graduate from the MA in Music Leadership. So both in the classes and outside the classes, even though this is an online degree, I have a lot of fun finding creative ways to bring us together, even in an online setting, to get to know one another and develop this really great community of learners, both for now and in the future.
Yeah, and I'm just going to add to that, because sometimes, our faculty don't always like to toot their own horn. But I will say that while everybody at Eastman has had to come up to speed with remote teaching, even faculty who had challenges, shall we say, in the technology area. The faculty in the Institute for Music Leadership have been doing this for some time and have been doing it really well. And so when you see, in my position, I have the opportunity to see, presentations of what these courses look like and how they're organized and how the faculty work, as Rachel was saying, to bring, to build community with an online course and really bring the cohort together and keep people on task and keep them making progress towards completion of the degree, which is so important. They're doing a really excellent job of it. So, it's just important to also keep in mind that not all online programs are created equal. And I can say, maybe not completely objectively, that they're doing an excellent job of it. There's a question here about the admissions timeline, which I'm happy to address. There are essentially two opportunities to apply, one of which just passed. And so we had an early October deadline for students applying to start in the spring term, which we say spring, we mean usually January. This year it's been pushed back to February. But that's the first opportunity. And then the application is now still open and will be until December 1st for the cycle that will begin in the summer of 2021. So a student applying now, interviewing in February, would begin typically in the summer of 2021. So with that, I think we've made it through the submitted questions, and maybe it's the closing question, I don't know, we'll see if any more pop up, but I just wanted to ask a question, Rachel, just about how you wound up doing this. Was there anything about your Eastman experience that led you to go down this path of arts leadership and entrepreneurship?
I credit my entire career actually to being an Eastman student. When I entered as an undergraduate, I thought, okay, I want to play piccolo in the Boston Symphony, not really comprehending what that meant. And when I walked into Eastman, I was surrounded by so many amazing people who were great thinkers and who were always willing to direct a student to other resources. I was fortunate enough to be directed to the Arts Leadership Program. I was one of the first classes that was participating in the ALP program. I took a number of classes on marketing, built a very primitive website back in the day when websites were just beginning, learned about some marketing and PR strategies, again, still with faxes and other things, dating myself here a little bit, but getting engaged with how things run. And I just loved it. I had internships with the Eastman Media and PR department, an internship with the Rochester Philharmonic. And it was at those experiences where I thought, this is what I want to do. I love the behind the scenes work and being able to make connections and make things happen. And one piece that I'd say that Eastman instilled within me, and I think is still valid and a huge piece of what we do today, is this mindset of entrepreneurship. If you have an idea or if you see a need, it's not that you know all the answers, but you can create that own pathway for yourself to make that change happen. And at every point in my career, that's what I've been able to do. With my first step in the Houston Symphony, being able to work with music director Hans Groff for this Firebird project. I didn't know what I was doing, but I figured it out and put myself in with other people to figure out how to make it happen. And then transitioning to the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra, where at the time I only had a degree in flute performance, but helped to plan the grand opening ceremonies, the 3-day grand opening ceremonies of a 12,000 seat outdoor amphitheater. And again, it's all about that creative mindset. And if you see a need, how do you kind of forecast and backcast to figure out what do you need to do to make happen? Fast forward to New England Conservatory and starting and running the entrepreneurial musicianship department. And then when I saw this position open, I thought, well, I've never been a faculty member before. I don't know that this is the right thing, but I just love this school so much. I think so highly of what the Institute for Music Leadership does for so many of our students. And that was the motivation that kept me going. And I thought, well, I'll never know unless I try. So I submitted my application and fast forward, and here I am now 3 years in, But I'd say that's the one thing that has made all the difference at every step of my career is the mindset that is instilled, and that's instilled through conversations, through advising, through mentoring, and through every class that I took. And it was because of that that my career has been where it has.
That's great. Thank you. What you just said, I think, is a great sort of closing remark, maybe for anybody that's, thinking about applying for this degree, but isn't quite sure. Because when are we ever quite sure, right, about this next step, and is it the right thing to do? And I think that idea of, you won't know until you try. So give it a shot. And actually it's, through the process of doing the application, having to prepare the materials, getting to speak with the faculty, getting to speak with current students, you will learn a lot about whether this is the right next step for you. And so making that decision before that point might be actually premature, and just letting yourself go through that process and then be presented with the opportunity to make that decision might be the way to put it. So with that, I'm going to put up some contact information here. If you have remaining questions that we weren't able to get to today, we'd certainly welcome you to reach out to us. You have Rachel's direct contact information here. And then the contact information for my colleague in the admissions office, our Associate Director of Admissions, Christina Crispin, who works directly with the Music Leadership Program and helping manage those applications. So we would love to hear from you. I'll maybe encourage you to use the emails versus the phones at this point, since we're still, we'll get back to you, but email might be the most direct way to reach us, as we're in this remote work scenario for the most part. But thank you, Rachel, for such an insightful presentation. Thank you all for joining us, and check back on the website. We have webinars coming all through the admission season on various topics. So there might be another one of interest to you, and we'd love to see you there. I should also mention that this webinar was recorded, so it will be available after if you missed a part or just enjoyed it so much that you want to share it with all your friends. That will be possible. So thanks very much, everyone, and have a great night.